Marcus "Tank" Williams flexed his massive biceps as he surveyed his kingdom. Hardcore Elite Gym, the most exclusive fitness facility in downtown Chicago. When he spotted the small Asian woman quietly doing bodyweight exercises in the corner, his face twisted with disgust. "Hey, you in the pink shirt!" Tank's voice boomed across the gym, causing every head to turn. "This isn't Planet Fitness, sweetheart. You're making my serious athletes uncomfortable with your cute little workout routine." The woman, barely 5'2", and maybe 110 pounds, looked up calmly. Her name was Lin Chen, though Tank didn't bother to ask. "I paid for a day pass like everyone else," Lin said quietly, her voice steady despite every eye in the gym now staring at her. Tank laughed, a sound that echoed off the walls. "Lady, look around. These guys are preparing for competitions, building real strength. You belong at some yoga studio, not taking up space where champions train." What Tank didn't know was that he was about to humiliate the wrong person. And in exactly 30 minutes, his entire world would come crashing down. Tank Williams had built Hardcore Elite from nothing. Former college football player, failed pro athlete, he'd channeled his bitterness into creating what he called a gym for real athletes only. His walls were covered with photos of muscular men and women, trophies, and his favorite sign, "Weakness is a choice." "Listen, princess," Tank continued, his voice dripping with condescension as gym members gathered around to watch the show. "I've been training champions for 15 years. I can spot weakness from across the room, and honey, you're practically radiating it." Lynn quietly rolled up her yoga mat, her movements precise and controlled. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice, didn't show any emotion. "My members pay premium prices because they don't have to deal with wannabes cluttering up the equipment," Tank pressed on, clearly enjoying the audience. "Why don't you try the community center down the street? They have nice light weights and mirrors where you can take selfies." The gym erupted in snickers. Tank's regular members, all massive bodybuilders and powerlifters, nodded in approval. This was their territory, and Tank was protecting it. "I understand," Lynn said simply, pulling a water bottle from her small backpack. "But I'd like to finish my workout first, if that's okay." Tank's face reddened. "Did you not hear me? I'm asking you to leave. Now." Lynn looked around the gym, her eyes stopping on the Olympic weightlifting platform in the center, the crown jewel of Tank's facility. The barbell was loaded with 315 pounds, left there by Tank's star athlete who'd just finished his session. "What if I prove I belong here?" Lynn asked, her voice still calm, but with a new edge that made Tank pause. "Prove it how?" Tank scoffed, but something in her tone made him curious. "Let me lift," Lynn said, pointing to the loaded barbell. "If I can clean and jerk that weight, I stay and finish my workout. If I can't, I'll leave and never come back." The gym went dead silent. 315 pounds was more than twice Lynn's body weight. Tank's heaviest female athlete could barely manage 225. Tank's laughter was cruel. "Lady, that weight will crush you. I could get sued if you get hurt attempting something that stupid." "I'll sign a waiver," Lynn said, pulling a folded paper from her backpack almost as if she'd expected this moment. "Full liability release." Tank studied her face, looking for any sign of doubt or fear. He found none. Her dark eyes were steady, almost familiar somehow. Fine, Tank said, his voice carrying across the silent gym. But when you embarrass yourself, I want you to remember that I tried to save you from this humiliation. Lynn walked to the platform with measured steps. She circled the loaded barbell like a predator studying its prey, her fingers brushing the knurled steel as she tested her grip. Tank crossed his arms, already imagining the story he'd tell for years about the delusional woman who thought she could lift with the big boys. His members gathered closer, phones out, ready to record what they assumed would be an epic failure. "Last chance to back out, sweetheart," Tank called out. "There's no shame in admitting you're out of your league." Lynn ignored him. She closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths, a ritual that had calmed her nerves in Beijing, London, Rio, and Tokyo. When she opened them, something had changed. The quiet, seemingly timid woman was gone, replaced by someone with the focused intensity of a laser. She chalked her hands with movements so precise and practiced that a few of the more experienced lifters in the crowd began to look uncomfortable. They'd seen those exact motions before, but only in one place. "Wait a minute," whispered Jake, Tank's assistant trainer. "The way she's chalking up, that's textbook Olympic technique." Tank waved him off. "Olympic technique, my ass. She probably watched some YouTube videos." Lynn approached the bar and set her grip. The gym was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. She bent down, positioned her feet, and looked up at the weight that was supposed to crush her. In one explosive movement, she cleaned the bar to her shoulders. The 3 and 15 pounds moved like it weighed nothing. The gym gasped collectively. But Lynn wasn't done. Without hesitation, she dipped and drove the weight overhead in a perfect jerk, locking it out with arms steady as steel. The silence was deafening. For 5 seconds, she held the weight overhead, 315 pounds that Tank said would destroy her, with the calm confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. When she lowered the bar and let it crash to the platform, the sound echoed like thunder. Tank's face had gone from smug confidence to complete shock. "What the hell?" "That was my warm-up weight," Lynn said quietly, pulling out her phone. "Should I add more?" Before Tank could respond, Lynn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smiled for the first time since entering the gym. "Perfect timing," she said, turning the screen toward Tank. "I was hoping this would arrive before I left." On the screen was an email with an attachment, a high-resolution photo of a small Asian woman standing on an Olympic podium, gold medal around her neck, American flag rising behind her. The woman in the photo was unmistakably Lynn Chen. Tank's face went white. That's not Tokyo 2021, Lynn said, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who'd conquered the world's biggest stage. Olympic gold medal in weightlifting, women's 59 kg division. Oh, and I also hold the current world record in both the snatch and clean and jerk for my weight class. The gym erupted in whispers and gasps. Phone cameras that had been ready to record her failure were now frantically Googling her name. Lynn Chen, someone read aloud from their phone. 3-time Olympian, 5-time world champion, American record holder. Tank was speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "The 3 and 15 pounds I just lifted," Lynn continued, now addressing the entire gym. "That's about 70% of my competition personal best. I was taking it easy because I didn't want to damage your equipment." Lin walked over to Tank's wall of champions, the photos and trophies he was so proud of. She pointed to a small framed newspaper clipping from 2021. "You know what's funny?" she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You actually have my photo on your wall, right there. Local Olympic champion brings gold home to Chicago. You've been using my Olympic victory to advertise your gym for 3 years." Tank followed her pointing finger and saw it, a small article about Chicago's Olympic hero that he'd framed and hung among his collection, never bothering to read it carefully. The headline read, "Lin Chen brings Olympic gold home to Chicago's South Side." His knees nearly buckled. "You've been telling people that Olympic champions train at your gym," Lin continued, her voice carrying across the now silent facility. "Using my achievement to bring in customers, charge premium prices, and build your reputation. But when the actual Olympic champion walks through your door, you try to kick her out because she doesn't look like your idea of what strength should be." The gym members were staring at Tank now, their expressions ranging from embarrassment to disgust. Several were already Googling Lin's competition videos on their phones. "Holy shit," whispered Marcus, one of Tank's biggest regulars. "She just lifted 315 like it was a warm-up. I've been training for 5 years and can barely hit 275. Lin pulled out another piece of paper from her backpack, this one official-looking with letterhead. "Mr. Williams, I'm actually here on business today. USA Weightlifting has been looking for a new official training facility in Chicago for our Olympic development program. We were considering Hardcore Elite based on your advertising claims about training champions." Tank's face went from white to green. "But after experiencing your champion training environment firsthand, I'll be recommending they look elsewhere. Any gym that judges athletes by appearance rather than ability isn't fit to develop Olympic talent." Lin wasn't finished. She addressed the crowd of gym members who had gathered to watch her humiliation. "How many of you have been told you're not strong enough, not built right, not the right type to be here?" Several hands slowly raised. "And how many of you believed it and almost quit training?" More hands went up. "Real strength isn't about looking the part," Lin said, her voice growing stronger. "It's about showing up, doing the work, and never letting anyone else define your limits. The weakest person in any gym is the one who judges others instead of focusing on their own improvement." She turned back to Tank, who was now visibly sweating despite the air conditioning. "Mr. Williams, I've been training since I was 8 years old. I've overcome poverty, discrimination, injuries that doctors said would end my career, and coaches who said I was too small to compete at the elite level. I've lifted on the world's biggest stages and carried my country's flag at the closing ceremonies." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but in the silence, everyone heard every word. "But today, in your gym, you made me feel smaller than I've ever felt in my entire life. Not because of anything you said about my lifting, but because you judged me without knowing anything about who I am or what I've accomplished." Tank finally found his voice, but it came out as a croak. "Lin, Ms. Chen, I had no idea." "That's exactly the problem," Lin interrupted. "You had no idea, but you made assumptions anyway. You saw a small Asian woman and decided she didn't belong in your temple of strength." She gestured around the gym. Half these people probably have incredible stories of perseverance and dedication. But you've created an atmosphere where people are afraid to be themselves, afraid to start their journey, afraid they don't look the part. Jake, the assistant trainer, stepped forward. "Ms. Chen, I just want to say, what you just did was incredible. I've been lifting for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like that." Other gym members began nodding and murmuring agreement. The tide had completely turned. "The saddest part," Lynn continued, "is that this could have been an amazing moment. I was genuinely excited to train here today. I'd heard good things about your facility, seen the Olympic lifting platform, thought this might be a place where I could train when I'm in town visiting family." She picked up her small backpack and slung it over her shoulder. "Instead, I got a master class in how prejudice disguises itself as expertise." As Lynn walked toward the exit, Tank finally managed to speak up. "Wait, please. I made a terrible mistake. I was completely wrong about you, about everything. Could we start over?" Lynn paused at the door and turned around one final time. The entire gym was watching, waiting to see what the Olympic champion would do. "Mr. Williams, starting over isn't the issue. The issue is what you learned from this." She looked around at the faces staring back at her, some embarrassed, some inspired, all completely captivated. "Every person who walks through that door has a story. The elderly man doing physical therapy might be a war veteran. The overweight woman on the treadmill might be a doctor saving lives between workouts. The teenager doing bodyweight exercises might be the next Olympic champion." Her voice carried the weight of someone who had spent years being underestimated. "Real champions don't just lift heavy weights, Mr. Williams. Real champions lift others up. They create environments where everyone feels worthy of pursuing their best self. They understand that strength comes in many forms, and the strongest gyms are the ones where everyone, regardless of size, age, or appearance, feels like they belong." Tank nodded slowly, the full weight of his mistake finally sinking in. "You have a choice," Lynn continued. "You can go back to running an exclusive club for people who already look the part, or you can build something that actually creates champions." She pushed open the door, letting in a shaft of sunlight that seemed to illuminate her small frame. "Because I can absolutely guarantee you this, the next Olympic gold medalist might not look anything like what you expect. And if you keep judging books by their covers, you'll miss out on training the greatest athletes of the next generation." Moral: real strength doesn't scream, it lifts, it endures, and when the moment comes, it shuts down the noise with silence. Have you ever been treated unfairly, only to prove everyone wrong? Drop your story in the comments. We read everyone. Like, subscribe, and share this video if you believe that everyone deserves respect the moment they walk in the door. New stories every week.